All right, I think we will get started. So welcome everyone and thanks so much for joining. My name is Laurel Brodman. I'm Managing Director of Admissions here at the Yale School of Management. I'm also a proud graduate of Yale SOM from the class of 2006. So I am so excited to get to spend some time with all of you joining us from throughout the world today alongside some of our current second year students who have generously given of their time on this rainy Friday afternoon in New Haven. To spend some time answering questions about their experience. The point of today is really to give you a sense of what it's like to be a student at the Yale School of Management, and we'll spend as much of the time as we can in the next hour or so getting a chance to answer your questions. I ask that any questions that you have and you want to submit, please do that through the Q&A function. So please don't use the chat. We'll be monitoring the Q&A function and selecting questions from there from our panelists. I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves as a first step. I spend just a few brief moments talking about a quick overview of the Yale School of Management. We'll launch into some questions and then, like I said, spend the bulk of the time answering questions that are coming from you in the audience. So with that, I'm going to ask Ethan to kick things off and share a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Ethan, as you all heard, and I grew up in the Atlanta area, but before this I was in the DC area working in the macroeconomics space. So I started off working at the Bureau of Labor Statistics on the US Jobs Report, and then after that working at the International Monetary Fund in the strategy unit. And so during my summer internship here at SOM, I was working at BCG in their DC office on a large retail pharmacy case. And
Great.
so that's all you need to know at the current juncture.
Thank you. How about Nico next?
Hi everyone, my name is Nico. So I come from South Carolina. Before SOM, I was in the New York area working in food systems, starting off in restaurants and then moving into food distribution. This last summer, I worked at a legal cannabis technology company doing internal strategy.
Great, thank you, Nico. Next up, Sammy.
Hi everyone, my name's Sammy. I'm originally from New York City, but prior to SOM, I lived out in San Francisco where I worked at an independent ad agency. This past summer, I interned in marketing at Pepsi and out of New York-ish.
Thank you, Sammy. And then last but not least, Sherry.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Sherry. I'm a second year full-time MBA. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from New Jersey. And prior to SOM, I was working in pharma consulting. I also did 2 years in corporate strategy at a healthcare insurance company. And over the summer, I was an intern with the Chartist Group, which is a hospital consulting firm.
Thank you so much. So we have students joining us from a lot of different industries and perspectives. So I'm looking forward to hearing some more insights from you all in just a little bit. As I said, I'll spend just a couple of moments touching upon the school and maybe setting some foundations for the conversation that we'll have from here. But I think the best place to start in any conversation about the Yale School of Management is with our mission. It is our founding mission and has always been to educate leaders for business and society. And this means we aim to develop leaders who can think broadly about the challenges that we face in an increasingly complex world and who have the ability to be decision makers in environments that are complex and where you have to consider multiple stakeholders and influencers and consequences. And we really believe our mission has never been more relevant than it is today. And in support of that mission, there are 3 things about the Yale SOM experience that I think really make it distinctive among top business school programs and that exist very much in support of that mission. And those are that we are the business school most integrated with its home university. So as a member of the Yale SOM community, you truly are a member of the broader Yale University community. We are a distinctively global business school, and I'd like to be able to touch upon some of the international or global experiences that our students have had or are maybe looking forward to having in the coming months as things start to reopen a bit. And we aim to be the best source of elevated leaders for all sectors and regions. And I think our unique integrated curriculum is a real driving force behind that. And maybe we'll get a chance to touch upon that a little bit more in our conversation today. And like I said, I'm not going to talk at you for too much longer. I want to make sure that we give our students an opportunity to speak with you as much as possible. So I'm actually going to stop my share for the time being so that we can put everyone here front and center. And so if you're joining a little bit late, I'll just remind you, please use the Q&A function if you have questions for our panelists. That's what we'll be monitoring. But to kick things off, I'm going to put a question out to each of you, and feel free to answer in whatever order you'd like. And that first question will be, why did you choose Yale SOM? What brought you here? Any of you can start.
I'll happily jump in. So YSM for me really came mostly to the community. The folks that I spoke with before coming here had all different kinds of backgrounds, were from different kinds of places, and that was something I really wanted for my experience here. In addition, I felt that they were very supportive. They were willing to put me in touch with other people, and they were really engaging and engaged in what they were doing. And I think that really is what flipped for me. I wanted to be part of that community and add to it.
Thanks, Nico.
Yeah, I can go next. So one of the key reasons I came to Yale SOM was due to its integration with the rest of the university. And I'm really putting that into practice this semester. So I'm taking courses all over the place. So I'm taking a class at the School of Art, a documentary filmmaking course, which I'm working on right now. I'll be interviewing some MBA students soon enough. So watch out for that. The screening will be coming on in December. But anyway, I digress. So also taking a class at the law school, critical race theory, which has been good. Class at the School of Environment, Business and Sustainability. And then also taking a philosophy course with a bunch of undergrads at Yale College on the mortality of the soul. So I've just really enjoyed being able to construct a curriculum which really speaks to my own aspirations, and I find it very life affirming. So that's one of the key reasons I'm here at SOM. But I'm also taking corporate finance. Don't worry, I am getting some.
That's great, Ethan. For those who don't know, you can actually take as many courses in whatever classroom you like throughout the entire university to count towards your elective courses. Ethan, that might set a record in terms of what I've heard within a sort of the space of a single semester outside of SOM, but that's fantastic.
I'm happy to hop in. I definitely echo what Nico and Ethan have said, though I have yet to take courses outside of SOM. I'm looking forward to doing that in the spring. I think something that really stood out about SOM to me was taking sort of a step back from all the awesome opportunities Ethan was mentioning to the core curriculum in your first year. I really loved the stakeholder perspective and the organizational sort of thought process behind all of it. As I was applying to business school, I was really nervous about sort of my quantitative and financial skills. And this is very clearly like consumer behavior study, but someone telling me we're taking competitor versus competitive economics or accounting and finance and all those different things, that made a real difference to me. And it just made it seem that much more approachable. And I think that perspective really is what you see in the business world. You're never really doing one sort of siloed task. It's always in concert with a million other things. And I thought that that perspective in the core curriculum was really realistic. And that's what really drew me in as well.
Great. Thanks, Sammy.
I'll wrap us up. Ethan, we should talk. And Ethan and I were both in critical race theory, and I dropped it because it was too difficult. So I am also only taking some classes this semester. But I think for me, there were really a couple of things that drew me to SOM. The first is the mission. I think SOM's mission as educating leaders for business and society definitely made it stand out to me as I was looking at different programs. I feel very strongly that businesses can and should make social impact a priority. And I found that the community of students that are interested in that is very strong at SOM. I also think that because of that mission, SOM draws a lot of folks interested in non-traditional career pathways, and also draws in people from non-traditional pathways. And I really wanted to kind of expose myself to people working in, the cannabis industry, for example, as just one area. And then finally, I think definitely +1 to what Ethan said, though I haven't really lived it as much as he has. But the idea that we can take classes across the Yale ecosystem is such a huge draw. Again, because to other people's points, there are so many different things to consider when you're in a leadership position or when you're thinking about how to tackle a problem, in your personal or professional life. So, and I would say, even though I don't take any SOM classes right now, because of that integration with the broader school, there are so many dual degree students that I, gain inspiration from and learn from every day. And I think that's also a really great way that manifests itself into the SOM experience.
Great, thank you for that. I've recently heard the Yale University community described as porous, in that lots of people kind of coming in and out of schools. So to Sherry's point, I think even if you're not necessarily sitting in a class outside of SOM, you've got that perspective from those who are studying in other parts of the university in your classroom, which is really valuable to be able to learn from others who are studying something very deeply that's very different from what your primary focus is. So I think that's a very cool aspect of the experience. So obviously the classroom experience is an important part of business school, but so are the people that you are kind of going through that experience with. So I'd again like to hear from each of you on this one. How would you describe the Yale SOM community? And you could talk about that broadly, or if you have any sort of specific examples that you'd bring to light, that I'll open that up to the group.
I can start. I think the first word that comes to mind when someone says the SOM community is sort of, or I guess it's 2 words, sorry, dynamic and inclusive. I think that this year being back in Evans Hall, we can discuss last year separately, but being back in Evans Hall with all the classes and students and professors all together, it's a hive, it's always a buzz, and everyone is sort of deeply invested in whatever it is that they're doing that day, whether it's classes, whether it's group meetings, whether it's recruiting and listening to different speakers. It's really just dynamic, for lack of a better word. And I think that's something that I noticed when I came to visit, and that was back in early 2020, and I'm excited to sort of see back around the hall.
Thanks, Sammy. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I echo a lot of that. I think the word I would use is supportive, much to my earlier point. I came to realize, I think halfway through, that business school is about helping other people. I found that when I was going through my first year, and in so many ways I was either lost or didn't know which way I wanted to go, talking to other people led me the right way, finding out what resources were best to take advantage of. And then as I was going through recruiting, which is a very stressful process, specifically in the full-time, there were people there who were willing to guide me, and I learned from their experiences that summer. And I would say that carried through from the very beginning when you're going through the core curriculum all the way to the second year, where we're not only helping each other out as second years, but reaching out to the first years as well in many different ways.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. The word I would use is generous. So everyone I've met's been very generous with their time, with their knowledge, with their words of encouragement. And it's really a great community to be a part of. I mean, whenever you're going through something in particular, let's say something personal happens, there are people there to support you throughout the process and make sure you get the support you need to get to where you're trying to go. So that's all I'll say. Generous, leave it there.
I will just +1 everything that everyone else said, whether it's, having a question in the Slack channel about where should I get my hair cut to, how can I best position myself for recruiting? Everybody is super willing to help each other.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to add mine to that. I always like the word idealistic too, in the best possible sense, to talk about the SOM community. I think it's people who are hungry for change and hungry to leave whatever organization they're a part of better than when they got there. And I think that that's a great mindset to have coming into, coming into 2 years that you spend with a community. So I'll add that as well. We have so many good questions coming in already. So I'm going to start to take questions from the audience, and just a quick shout out again for anyone who joined late, please use the Q&A function if you have a question that you'd like to submit. So like I shared with the panelists before, I don't feel like everyone needs to answer every single one of these, but it would be great to get one or two perspectives on each. I actually have a question specifically for Ethan, but that it would probably be helpful to hear from one other as well. So the question is, what resources at SOM aided your career switch to consulting? So we can start there, but I'd actually love to hear from maybe a couple of you about your experience in kind of the career search process since you've been a student at SOM. So we'll start with Ethan and then maybe hear from one other.
Yeah, so when I look back at my recruiting journey, which is quite a journey, to put it mildly, I'm glad it's behind me and not in front of me now. So I would say there are really three resources. The primary one was the student-led club, the consulting club. The second one was the affinity groups at the consulting firms I was recruiting with, and then the CDO is there as well, but they're mainly there for resume drops. But anyway, let me start with the first. So the student-led organization, the consulting club, was very helpful in having weekly sessions they would put on and walking me through the casing process. So what steps I needed to do in order to be successful in that part of the interview. And then they also have behavioral part. Then there was also a case team I was a part of. Sherry was part of that team. So I like to say the only reason I was successful in recruiting was thanks to her ability to case with me when I needed it. Actually, our case team, well, no, I won't go into this. But yeah, so that was key. And actually my case team leader was an MD MBA, a really smart guy. And I was actually like level 2. So I was like sort of into consulting, maybe not. And so he was just very good at, well, he's a psychiatrist by training. So he was very good at making sure we were in the right mental state. And then also he had an offer at McKinsey, but now he's at Stanford doing his residency in psychiatry. But anyway, so great things to say about my case team leader. And then also just being able to case with first year MBAs. I mean, people would just be on Slack saying, hey, and we want a case on Saturday, and you would just link up with them and they give you a case. Then you would give them a case. And so it was a very beneficial experience to be able to case with all of my classmates who I didn't even get to really meet last year because of COVID. But anyway, that you won't have to deal with that. And then secondly, I would say the affinity groups at the recruiting firms were very helpful as well. They were making sure I had the resources I needed in order to thrive during the interview. And then lastly, the CDO is there as well. I would say they're mainly there to facilitate you with the recruiters. And then also they can give you some advice on the resume, and they do some mock behavioral interviews as well. But I would say the primary thing which helped me was the student-led initiatives.
Great, thanks, Ethan. And maybe let's hear from someone just who went through the process in a different field and non-consulting, just for a little bit of a different perspective.
So I can speak to non-consulting internship recruiting, but I actually just accepted an offer at a consulting firm.
So maybe Sammy, and what was your experience like recruiting for Pepsi?
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say I'm not a career switcher, so don't know if that is important to the question, but yeah, so Pepsi recruits what we call structured on-campus recruiting. So they post through our career center. They host a series of events, starting with a corporate presentation. Then they have sort of an informal coffee chat where you can just get to know the team at Pepsi that's recruiting. Oftentimes they're Yale alums, SOM alum, or just live locally in the area. Historically, they used to come to campus for these, but for the past 2 years, they've been virtual. And then it kind of all culminates in interview invitations, and I think sort of a super day of a few different interviews. I echo a lot of what was said about using the clubs. Marketing also does a bit of casing, though it is decidedly different than consulting casing. And I've never been more grateful to be a marketer and not a consultant than when casing. But we have sort of a similar structure of second years who have successfully completed recruiting, either for their internship or accepted a full-time job offer. They work with first year teams to help them sort of navigate the search and process and understand how interviewing works. So that's something I'm actually doing now and really enjoying as well. But I'm definitely doing it to pay it sort of forward from my case team leader from last year. They were just an awesome role model and example, and really I would have been lost without them. So really excited to kind of give back in that way. But yeah, I think one thing to note also about marketing and maybe the non sort of consulting tracks is there also is a lot of sort of unstructured recruiting that doesn't necessarily come to campus. And that onus is more on you to kind of think about your network, the SOM network, and anything else you might bring to the table in places that you're interested in looking. Nico might have a bit more experience in this realm. I did a bit of it, but essentially it looks just like hitting LinkedIn and the alumni directory pretty hard and just thinking about what your goals are and trying to figure out the best ways in with the tools that you have. The CDO, the career office, is also really supportive in this realm. They help you think about how to structure outreach and how to be effective as a networker, thinking about the sort of unstructured side of things. And I definitely have friends who found marketing roles in that type of way as well. I just kind of lucked out in the on-campus. They came to me. Yeah.
I actually would love to hear from Nico, because I almost feel like the three of you represent distinct buckets. I mean, the consulting firms are among the organizations that come and they have massive MBA recruiting engines and they bring in multiple students every year. A company like Pepsi also has a structured recruiting process in place, but is not necessarily hiring 10 SOM students every year. It's a bit of a more narrow funnel. And then obviously there are a lot of students who go through searches that are not through those structured processes. They're more driven by their own individualized interests and involve a different type of sort of hustle in order to get to the finish line. So Nico, if you want to share a little bit about that, maybe that third bucket.
Sure. Yeah. So my internship recruiting process, as people pointed out, was largely self-driven. It's what we call unstructured. I find it interesting that when you become an MBA, there's something called just-in-time hiring, which was for me just hiring, was normal recruiting. And what's interesting about that, as you said, there's a lot of resources dedicated towards these sort of larger firms that have a large presence. But that doesn't mean that there isn't space for someone who's passionate about entrepreneurship, which I am. In fact, part of my goal to go to a large consulting firm is to be able to get the skills I need to then enter entrepreneurship again from a different space. So that's in the service of that goal. This summer, the process for searching for a job this summer, three things stand out to me. One, the Yale name. People listen. If you cold email them, they will respond to you. They want to know what you have to say. They're interested in talking to you, and that goes really far. The Alumni Network, I know we pushed on this a little bit, but it's not so much that an alum is going to hire you. It's more just you have a conversation with them, you get to know them, they want to get to know you, and they're happy to put you in touch with folks in their network. And then the conversation goes from there. And I will say the last thing is there are folks here in this community at SOM and also larger Yale who know a lot about many different kinds of things. And so even if you don't have the direct resources for that niche thing or that thing you don't have here, you will be able to find it through the broader Yale community.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions related to the classroom experience and sort of the class experience. So I'm going to cluster those together. Maybe hear from a couple of you on what do you see as the benefits of a smaller class size relative to other MBA programs? So for those who don't know, SOM's typical incoming class is somewhere in the neighborhood of 340 or 350 people, which is not small, but is small relative to a lot of our kind of peer programs. So let's hear from a couple of people about your experience with that.
So I always preface questions like this with I've only ever attended SOM, so I can't speak to the experience at a larger or smaller school, but I can speak to kind of the just right middle size of SOM. I think a big strength is that your first year, you're organized into cohorts, which are, I think, about 70, 75 or so students. And you take every single core class with that group of people, with maybe a few exceptions. And I think the exciting piece about the cohort is they tend to be representative of the greater class. So there are 5, guys, check me on this, MBA cohorts. And each of them kind of is representative of the whole entire class. So you're right off the bat able to really get to know closely 70, 75 other students. And then through clubs, extracurriculars, and all of that, you're able to kind of expand that net outward. I think sitting in the classroom with 70, 75 students throughout your whole first year for the core was really special, because by sort of honestly fall 2, the second half of our fall semester, everyone gets really comfortable with one another. You kind of have a sense of people's backgrounds, what types of things they're interested in, who is a finance whiz, was a former accountant, who you can kind of go to for homework help and support, as people have sort of mentioned. And I think that it's exactly the right size to kind of breed that community and closeness. But again, I've only attended here.
Let me turn to another sort of class. Well, this is more classroom related. So one of the unique features of the SOM curricula is our raw case methodology, and raw cases are developed in-house at Yale SOM. So one of the questions is, can you describe the learning experience from raw cases?
I'm happy to take this one. So for general overview, a traditional business case is a PDF document that has maybe like 10 to 15 pages of words outlining the context of the question that the protagonist is trying to solve, and then there's a number of graphs and images at the end. So it's just very neatly packaged. The raw case, in contrast, is kind of structured as an actual website where you can click through different themes of content, and there are often like many links to newspaper articles about that specific issue from the time. There may be videos of actually the protagonist talking about this experience, and so it's just from an engagement perspective, it's much more rich and it's much more interactive, in my opinion. So I actually really enjoyed that. I was able to watch videos of the people who are actually living through this decision or this challenge, and hear their perspective. So, I think for me, that was really enriching. And I remember some of my favorite cases were raw cases.
Great, thank you. We have a question about the professors at SOM. So how your relationship with professors over the course of what has been the nature of your relationship with professors over the course of the year plus that you've been at SOM? Are they accessible? Are they personable and interested in kind of investing in your goals and your work? So maybe if one or two of you can talk about your experience with the professors at SOM.
Yeah, I could take this one. So I found the professors, so a couple things. At SOM, we can take courses with professors that are not only SOM professors, but they may come from different fields, specifically in the core curriculum. And starting off at the core curriculum level, they were very invested in not just the subject matter, but also in teaching, like the art and the act of teaching. And that was something that I felt really resonated with me when I was going through coursework that I didn't really know much about, and that there was a large spread of skills across the student body. And so what that meant was if I went to office hours or reached out, I would get a response, even during these core curriculum courses, which everyone has to take. Moving forward into the elective courses, once you choose to be in these courses and they're much smaller, you automatically have a lot more attention from the professor if that's something you're interested in. And building off of that, I would say that it's up to you how engaged you want to be. I think that every professor I've been with, if I engage with them, either walking up to them after class, because there's a period of time between classes where you can do that. A lot of them have lunch meetings where they specifically carve out time to make sure that each student gets a chance to talk to them personally. I find that it's really easy to create a relationship. I mean, their offices are just above where we take courses. So they're very much accessible and they're very much engaged in my learning, our learning, but also making sure that they get to know us.
Maybe hear another perspective, because I think it's such an individual question how people kind of engage with professors. So maybe let's hear from someone else too.
Yeah, I can just give a quick anecdote here. So I'm taking a course called Business and Environment, and for that I was doing a group project on looking at 4 large retailers on their corporate governance structure and how that affects their sustainability objectives. And so for that, I actually just reached out to a professor at SOM who's working at Amazon He's one of the directors at the Amazon Climate Pledge Fund, which is like their $2 billion venture capital arm. And he's actually not even teaching at SOM right now. He teaches renewable project finance, but he still took an hour out of his day, even though he's out in Seattle, to talk to me and other students about what Amazon's doing in that space. So I think that really says a lot to me that he's actually working full time. He says he doesn't even really have time to teach next semester, but he's going to do it anyway. So the class is going to be at night, even though he'll be working full time at Amazon as well. So that really just shows the dedication a lot of these professors have and how serious they take engaging with the student body.
Another question, and I think we'll have to caveat this one with that. Obviously, all of your first years at the school were exceptional in the sense that it was a very unusual first year experience in being kind of in a hybrid environment and being more limited as it pertains to travel, which is sort of where this question is going. But the question is around what are some examples of SOM's focus on global leadership and what types of global experiences are available to students. And I did see that the international experience trips are opening back up for the spring, which is I'm hugely excited about. And hopefully many of you and your classmates will have a chance to experience some global travel sort of to supplement your experience here. But if you could speak to kind of how you see kind of global engagement has played out during your time at SOM and how you anticipate maybe continuing that within the coming year. Let's hear a little bit about that.
I can definitely start. I don't have direct international experience at SOM under my belt just yet, but to echo what Laurel was just saying, so we do have these courses called Ies International Experiences that are offered in the spring, and they kind of culminate in a 1-week trip to a country that you've been studying with a professor. So I've not done one personally, but it seems like it's a really great opportunity to just kind of get to know a professor really closely, echoing on that previous question, but also get to know your classmates really well. So you spend, my understanding is, sort of the semester leading up to it, learning about what you're going to be seeing, doing, experiencing, et cetera, on the trip. And it all culminates in this 1-week trip over our 2-week spring break. I think something that I've been really grateful for about the SOM community is that even in sort of the face of COVID and all of the restrictions that we've, not necessarily SOM uniquely, but the US has been facing with travel, students have gotten really creative, and we've done a lot of things more on the informal side of things, just really celebrating the international students in our community. So we have a couple friends who have done sort of different, like, taste their local cuisine nights. So we've stayed in New Haven, but fully kind of felt like we were elsewhere. And that's been, I feel like, a really special way to kind of engage with the international side of the community. And we also have a couple classmates who have been planning sort of treks to their home countries to bring their fellow students with them and really experience the culture. So again, kind of more on the informal side, but I think just really also speaks to the creativity and resilience of our community in the face of unfortunate times.
Similarly to Sammy, I haven't done haven't engaged with the kind of global offerings that SOM has, but I have a couple of close friends who have done the Global Social Enterprise course, which is, I think, just a really great blend of delivering an international experience and tying it to the mission of the school, which is, again, to further to use business for society, essentially. So I know in a lot of these courses, you're working directly with organizations in other countries. I think a lot of students worked on with an Indian organization this past semester or maybe last year, and a lot of the projects are focused on enhancing financial inclusion for rural people in India, or increasing mobile health access. These are the types of projects that I think are, one, super meaningful in terms of impact, and two, really challenge students to kind of step out of maybe their comfort zone and work on these projects that are truly like very interdisciplinary, and really require you to understand the local context, and understand how the delivery of these services or whatever may be can be and should be different than if we were to deliver them in the US. And I believe that trip, although they did not go abroad last year, they usually do about 2 years, 2 weeks, 2 weeks in the host country.
Obviously, the opportunity to travel globally is very appealing and a thing that was sorely missed in last year's curriculum. But I think to the point that's been brought up, the classroom and the community experience, I think, is a highly global one, even sitting in New Haven. A typical SOM class is somewhere in the neighborhood of 45% of students hold an international passport. And so you don't have to travel physically necessarily to get that global perspective in the classroom. But I know that everyone is eagerly awaiting the international travel opportunities to resume. I'm actually just pulling up the list of international experience courses that'll be available this spring. And I see the trips are London, Paris, Iceland, Costa Rica, Uruguay, Peru, and Israel this time around. It's always a really interesting kind of sampling of locations. And I think to Sammy's point, it's an opportunity to get to know a professor really well in a different kind of context as well. So I'm excited for these opportunities to resume more in full in the coming year and stretch. Okay, there's so many good questions coming in. I like this one. This one may take a second to think about, but what is Yale SOM's best kept secret? So another way to think about it is what's something that maybe you didn't know existed before coming to SOM, but now that you're at SOM, it's sort of something you can't live without, or glad you experienced. I'll answer while you're thinking. I would actually argue that New Haven is Yale's best kept secret. I don't think most people come to SOM specifically to come to New Haven the way that you might decide to go to business school in a major city somewhere and saying, I'm applying here because I want to be in New York or Chicago or that type of thing. But I actually think New Haven is a hidden gem and a really nice place to be a part of a real community beyond your school during your time at SOM. A lot of people spend time outside the classroom engaging in sort of activities and their sort of community building enterprises during their time here through social impact consulting club and opportunities to engage beyond SOM. The current mayor of New Haven and governor of Connecticut are both SOM alums, so some people really stick around and get engaged, but I think New Haven is a great place to be for 2 years or longer, and provides a lot of the sort of engagement of a bigger city, but on a smaller scale, and really allows you to put some of the skills that you're learning in the classroom into practice if it's meaningful to you to be really kind of a part and a citizen of the place that you're spending 2 years. So that's my answer to that question.
I guess I'll add wine classes, very entertaining. Philippe is a great instructor, and I very much enjoyed getting to learn about the different varietals out there in different regions under his tutelage. So that's something which meets 8 times each semester, and you're essentially just drinking or tasting wine with your fellow MBAs each Monday. So that's been great.
I don't know if it's a secret so much as it's not written down anywhere, but I found it, as I'm a musician, and something that I found really amazing about the community here is it's been really easy to find people to play music with, or to go to performances that they hold, because people are really engaged with what you call it your hobby, your passion, and I have found that to be one of the best parts of my experience here.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Sherry. Ditto. I don't know if it's a secret. In fact, it was something I was really drawn to about SOM before I came, but I think maybe a rephrase of the question is my favorite part about SOM, or my favorite non-academic part about SOM is our hockey club. I'm one of the captains, so I feel obliged to give a quick plug, but essentially Hockey club is one of SOM's sort of most beloved clubs. And I'm not just saying that as a captain, it truly is, I think. And I think something that's really special about it is we will teach people how to skate. We will have former college players. We will have everyone in between. And it's really truly open to anyone who is interested in learning about hockey, learning how to play hockey, learning how to ice skate. It's, I think, just really truly the highlight. I've met so many incredible people. And you really gain a lot of trust in your fellow classmates when they're putting on skates for the first time and gearing up, and they look at you and they're like, okay, what next? And it's sort of up to you to help them navigate learning how to skate and all of that. So I think that's been my best kept secret-ish, not really secret.
I'll just jump in here really quick. I echo, Laurel, what you said about New Haven. I personally enjoyed living in New Haven and loving the smaller size city experience. This is, again, not really a well-kept secret, but I think something that I'm constantly inspired by is I'm in student government. I am one of the community and inclusion chairs, and I think in student government, I'm, again, constantly inspired by how dedicated all of my peers are to like advocating for the student experience, thinking critically about, hey, you know, like most recently, we feel that partners of students have been feeling like a little bit left out of the community, again, mostly due to COVID restrictions. So what can we do about that to really make this community really inclusive and integrated with the families that are supporting, you know, the students who are here. So again, not a really well-kept secret, but I'm always amazed and impressed by the kind of dedication that my peers have for, again, creating this really wonderful community.
Thank you. Ethan, you reminded me when you mentioned wine club, there is a classmate of mine who had a sort of an interesting business and society career. So he was an investment banker coming out of school for several years. But then he and his wife sort of quit their day jobs and opened up a fantastic wine bar called Flight in DC. So I'll make a plug for that, where we now host admissions events. But he actually came on to, I had my 15th reunion this past year virtually. And he did a virtual tasting with us. I sort of sent out a wine list ahead of time, said try to get something as close as possible to these and kind of let us through. And I love being able to see kind of classmates at this stage who have just taken on such different careers and different at different points there. So maybe you have to have Kabir back as a guest visitor when we're allowed visitors for Wine Club. He is an expert now. Let's stick with sort of the social side of things. And again, sort of with a grain of salt that some of these things are just starting to open back up and take on form, and some have not quite yet. So you may not have actually experienced any of these particular events, but question is, I've heard of events such as the annual Cohort Cup and weekly closing bell. Have any of you taken part in such events, or have you set up your own events to help bring people together? I know you just had Friendsgiving. Maybe that's something to talk about as well. So can you maybe talk about some of the, especially on-campus events, but it could be virtual too from your past year that have been pretty memorable.
I think I'm obligated to speak about Cohort Cup because it was this past weekend, and green very naturally crushed everybody else. So, and I consistently learned this about myself, that I try to avoid competitive things because, one, I'm a sore loser, but I'm an even more sore winner, and I'm just insufferable. But you know, couldn't do anything about that this time. Cohort Cup is just all the cohorts get together, they field a team of, you know, and we go out and play soccer. And it's just a great way to, I think, Nico, like to your point about finding musicians and you know, being able to express these other sides of ourselves, when a lot of times our day is inundated with just talking about our career interests or the classes that we're taking, and these are the problems that we're tackling. Just to go out and do something like hockey or soccer or playing instruments or what, it just feels like a great way to get to know each other in a different context. So for me, that's what Cohort Cup was, other than beating everybody else. And We haven't had any like formal closing bells the way that previous classes have because of COVID restrictions. That being said, a lot of our elected cohort representatives are doing a really great job of kind of organizing informally opportunities for people to get together, not just within cohorts, but outside of cohorts. And again, taking advantage of some of these like hidden gems in New Haven, like Bear's Smokehouse Barbecue or Trinity, places that we can be like outdoors together safely have been really great.
Anyone else want to share?
I would just echo that in addition to sort of the cohort representatives hosting things, we're also now starting to see clubs and affinity groups hosting things on Thursday afternoons and evenings, or even Wednesdays, any day really. And it's just really nice to see everyone kind of coming together. So I'm excited for hopefully what's to come on that one.
So one question that this brings to mind, obviously all of you guys are very busy. You've got social activities going on, you've got extensive requirements in the classroom, you've got recruiting. How do you have time for it all? How do you balance these things? And are there sort of things that have taken more or less of your time, but do you, how have you approached the many kind of competing demands during your time at SOM?
Carefully, defensively schedule a little bit, and be honest with yourself. I think what an amazing thing to have so many different resources and things to choose from. I think that one of the things is grade non-disclosure is an amazing thing because I get to pour myself into the coursework that matters to me, but also the things that I know I need to learn but would like to spend time on other things. It allows me that flexibility. And I would just say that people are also just like very real. Like they understand that you have competing pressures. So I don't think there's like a hard and fast rule, but it can be done.
Yeah, I think to the extent that you can go into any MBA experience is going to be really just like overwhelming, and like there are going to be so many different opportunities to do so many different things. For me, trying to be very articulate and clear about what I wanted to get out of the experience helps me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to say, I said I wanted to like connect with people that are different from me. Am I doing that? Like the way that I feel connected to people is doing one-on-one coffee chat. So did I do a one-on-one coffee chat this week? And if I didn't, like, then I know kind of to go and make time for that, as I'm thinking about my next week. And similarly, I was really interested in getting involved in like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And so I'm kind of finding myself doing those things again, because before I arrived, I had these kind of like hypotheses of how I wanted to spend the time. And I think, part and parcel to that is saying, I want to try something new. And if you create that as a goal, then you will make time to like do something that you maybe normally wouldn't have done. So I think like having some kind of idea about how you want to spend that time, and then giving yourself time to reflect regularly throughout your semester, throughout the year, has helped me a lot to kind of articulate again when I'm making a decision about going to, this event versus that event, or like getting lunch with somebody or doing this assignment. I can make those trade-offs a little bit more easily.
I think that's really sound advice. Useful to think about when you are, I think, you are juggling a lot of things during your time at school, and you all seem to be doing an excellent job of it. We have a little bit more time before we wrap. I'm going to jump around a little bit. You've touched upon this in a couple of the other questions that have come up, but maybe if we can speak a little bit more specifically about what has your interaction been with the Alumni Network during your time as a student? How have you been able to utilize that network? And I would talk about that maybe in specifically the SOM, and to the extent that you've had engagement with the broader Yale network as well, through the job search or otherwise.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm taking this course on sustainability. And so we were trying to set up interviews with people in large corporations in the sustainability space at Walmart, Target, Costco, and Amazon. And so I was able to just cold call some alumni at Walmart who's in the strategic unit regarding sustainability there. And he was happy to give us an hour of his time to speak with him. Also at Target, I was able to get in contact with some alumni. So it's very easy to just reach out to people who you've never talked to before and who you have a very tenuous relationship to, and they're pretty generous with their time. So I think it's pretty easy to do.
I can share. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can share just a quick anecdote. I reached out to a couple of different alum as I was thinking about marketing in my summer, and a few different alum who were part of companies that were recruiting on campus. And I think because I had reached out through the SOM alum sort of portal and used that as sort of my first entry point to them, I found that whenever I would speak to them, they were like, I'm happy to talk to you with my like SOM alum hat on or with my corporate hat on. And I just found that a really nice balance. I know it sort of sounds a bit funny, but sometimes when you're having these chats, thinking about your career and your future and your interest in certain companies, it's also helpful to take a pause and just have someone who seems to be really invested in you, just one-to-one as an alum. And I thought I was really sort of taken aback by how many people sort of said that to me, of like, we understand if this company isn't right for you, but we want to help you figure out what is right for you. And so I think it was really nice to see alum being able to sort of separate the company that they work at and the recruiting and everything that they have on their plate, with just truly wanting to sort of connect and help as best that they could.
Thank you for sharing that, Sammy. I'm going to close out, thinking about our audience today, and I'm sure we have folks joining us who have already applied to Yale SOM and are awaiting a round one decision in a couple of weeks from now. Some people who are planning on completing their application in the coming year. Some might be doing due diligence for a business school application down the line. So try to put yourself in sort of that time and space in your own experience. And I'd like to hear, what advice do you have for candidates who are preparing to apply to SOM? And maybe as an extension of that, what do you wish you had known when you were applying to business school that now, after the wisdom of a year and change being a student, you could go back and tell your applying self?
Okay, so I think for me, when I reflect, it's realizing that when you're at Yale, you're joining a very small community. So really try to put yourself in there and figure out, what you think you will bring, what you think you will take from it, and make sure you articulate that, because as I mentioned before, at least from my experience, the community matters so much here.
For me, when I was applying, I actually enjoyed the MBA application process. I mean, testing aside, it was, we don't often get this opportunity or make the time to really like sit and reflect on, well, what do I want to do in 5 years or 10 years? It made me really think about my 5 years of work experience and say, what did I like about the things that I did? Who were the types of people that I worked really well with, and why? When did I feel the most engaged, and when did I feel really unengaged? And how do I articulate those themes and those experiences to craft the way that I think about my future? So I found it was really rewarding. And so I guess the tip is, like, if you're not feeling fulfilled, like, dig a little deeper to really understand yourself and think about why you're trying to do an MBA next, and why SOM or why another school. It's as much of it's on you to like really think about what that community that you want to be in looks like. And there were schools that I applied to that I was typing this and like, I'm not even convincing myself that I should be applying to this school. So, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think, taking the time to really truly reflect on what is meaningful for you, What you are really looking to get out of this is only going to help you throughout the application process to come across really genuine, and then to make the most out of the experience when you get there.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And Sherry, I don't think you're alone in sort of finding fulfillment in the process. I think it can be both stressful and fulfilling at the same time, which is maybe a good characterization of business school as well. But I do think that there is reward that comes from spending the time while you're applying, thinking about these things, because it gives you a good foundation for when you go into both, you know, your mindset within your courses, the recruiting process, to have done some of that work, like you said, identifying what you like, what are your skills that you want to carry into future jobs, what has not fulfilled you previously that you know yourself well enough to avoid in the future, and the more kind of work that you can do while putting together your MBA applications, I think you're just on better footing once you come into a program. Sammy, Ethan, anything that you want to share before we wrap?
Okay, yeah, I go briefly here. I would just say be authentic in the application. Don't just say something because you think it's the right thing to say. And then also just when you're coming here, just think about what your priorities are. I know we talked about that, but you'll be pulled in a lot of different directions, and just come with an open mind, yet with a purpose as well. And I think that will go a long way.
That's so true. Sammy, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, I echo everything that was said. I think Sherry kept saying the importance of reflection and thinking about how you can move forward impactfully. Pairing that with also what Ethan just said, I think something I wish I reminded myself of more is there's no right story, there's your story. And that's what everyone wants to hear and learn. And that's what makes you a unique add to the community.
Thank you, all four of you, so much for taking the time today to share your experiences with those who are thinking about joining the Yale SOM community. I know it's incredibly valuable to hear perspectives from students who are going through the experience right now. So again, thank you so much for your time today. I know everyone appreciates it greatly. Thank you to everyone who joined us for today's event. I'm so glad that you chose to take some time out of your day to hear about our community. Hopefully, it sounds like the sort of community that you would be excited about joining, and whether you're applying in this cycle or in a future cycle, I'll look forward to getting to hear a little bit about your story along the way. So thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and weekends.
Thanks, everyone.